Hello and welcome back to my channel, International Dispute Management. I am Larry Long, and today I want to outline some issues that all mediators really must perfect to be successful, and that's diplomacy. By definition, diplomacy is actually an art. It really is an art. I've seen people that were just fantastic at it and other people that struggled. And I will admit I struggle in some certain incidents sometimes when you get into some very sensitive issues. But it's the art of dealing with people in sensitive and very tactful ways. And it really is something that you are very professionally skilled at in a manner that you don't offend people. Diplomacy is not only used domestically, but it's also in much to greater extent in international relationships. So before you start any mediation, you really want uh, to really polish up your diplomacy skills. It is the utmost importance that you understand the cultural, religious, and economic issues, as well as the history of the dispute that you're trying to mediate. Remember, we are looking for win-win situations, and you're going to have to build trust. And so you're going to have to know the history and the background before you can go in. And if you're going to try to be an independent neutral, you really need to know both sides. So that can create quite a challenge for someone that's never done this before. And I would never recommend someone that's never done an international mediation to try it on their own, because they are difficult. Okay, you cannot start trust building until you have a good understanding of these basics, and you must already be you have to use them, but you may be using them already and not really aware of how much you use them. So the diplomacy encompasses various forms of engagement between nations, between states, between individuals, and it serves a very distinct purpose in international relationships. Remember that an international uh, diplomacy, you are not the decision maker. Whatever decision or agreement that you come to, you have to ratify that with your government or with the powers to be. Okay. So diplomacy, again, encompasses various forms of engagement between nations, serving very distinct purposes in international relationships. Key types include cultural, economics, public, and environmental diplomacy. Now, these are not all. There's a lot more, but these are the ones that I'm going to try to cover today for a limited time. So cultural diplomacy, and I also feel that these are some of the most important ones. Um, but it also depends on the issue that you are trying to mediate. So cultural diplomacy involves the exchange of ideas, values, and traditions between countries to foster some kind of a mutual understanding and strengthen the relationship. So you're looking for a win-win. So what would help both of them? So when I talk about resource-based dispute management, that's what I'm looking for. I'm using the resource as the focal point. So we're going to, in my new book, Circularity and Resource-Based Dispute Management also addresses that, because what we're looking at is recycling, whether it's mining waste or battery waste or different waste, and making it profitable for both sides. So, and we can do this internationally, and we can do this within the states. So the different ways that we do this is it includes some kind of an exhibition, educational exchanges, cultural festivals. We can do all this stuff to bring people together and actually start the conversation. So it aims to build soft power, from kind of from the bottom up and promote peace through cultural interchanges or and reactions. So economic diplomacy, because everyone's going to say, "What's in it for me?" So why would we want to do this? So there's all kinds of economic incentives that we can talk about that we will focus on. So you're going to focus on the use of economic tools and relationships to achieve national interest. So whether that is the exchange of different commodities, minerals, agriculture, those are going to be key to diplomacy. And those are going to be a lot of the tools that we're going to use. And that's what we're going to focus on, those natural resources. So again, we're going to look at trade, investment agreements, economic aid, and yes, tariffs. So, and tariffs are big right now. In my opinion, they're being misused, but usually tariffs are applied to bad actors or rogue states. So countries leverage their economic strengths to influence other nations and to secure favorable outcomes. And if both parties, that's what's in it for them, because they're always going to say, what's in it for me? Well, if you get to sell your product and we get to buy it at a reasonable price, that's a good deal. So public diplomacy, which may sound a little strange to you, but you probably do this already. Public diplomacy refers to efforts by governments to communicate and engage with foreign publics and to influence their perception and opinion. Again, the same things, the same tools that we're going to use is media outreach, cultural exchange, education programs, but we're building a positive relationship here. This public diplomacy takes years and decades because it depends on the culture you're trying to bring in and for what reason and what advantages it's going to give both sides. So environmental diplomacy, which is because I consider myself an environmentalist, addresses global environmental issues through international cooperation. So, the Paris Peace Accords are a good example. So this is negotiations on climate change, biodiversity, sustainable development, circularity, agriculture. I mean, there's just so many things that are there that I can't name them all right now. But this type of diplomacy is aiming to tackle and pressure environmental changes collectively. So they're looking to get a win-win for each country. And, CO2 emissions, climate change is a big one. Alternative energy is, with wind generation and solar. Those are huge issues in environmental, which is both locally and internationally. So the next one I want to talk about, and I'm briefly going to go through this, but it's very key, and that's digital diplomacy or media diplomacy. And of course, digital diplomacy utilizes digital technology, such as social media, and it's used to facilitate communication. And notice that I did not say negotiate or mediate. Facilitation is different. Facilitation is more like educational process to where we've got both sides talking and thinking, and we're going to bring these actors together, and they're going to create solutions that benefit both of them. This modern form of diplomacy allows for rapid information sharing and public engagement. So, and I'll caution you here, because it is so rapid, it can go any direction very fast. Adapting to the digital landscape because you've got so many hackers and you've got so many bad actors out there, it can go bad very quick. Because, another country may not want your country and the country that you're negotiating with to have an agreement. So they're going to put something negative out there to break it up. So before engaging in any online communication, the mediator needs to understand the other party's culture as far as not to offend them and also how they want to communicate. You know, it's through the different sources. I tell most young mediators to never start with a joke. You know, a joke may be funny to you, but it may be very offensive to somebody else. So if you offend one person with a joke, it will be like falling dominoes, and you will lose everyone, and you will lose your objective, and everything will just fall apart really quick. So don't do jokes, and don't talk about benefits of your culture over their culture. So the next one that I talk about, sometimes it's called track two, but I actually call it trust building. So track two diplomacy is informal and uninformal, so it's formal dialogue between non-governmental actors such as academics, civil society representatives. So this is kind of like from the bottom up and for the power structure. So you're going to get these people talking. And then again, this diplomacy takes years and sometimes decades. And sometimes you never achieve what you really want to achieve to begin with, just because there's so much difference in the actors. So international issues are best to go slow and just let all the parties get to know each other and build trust. And so you build this commonality of moving forward. So we talk about summit diplomacy. So we bring people all together in a high level, heads of state and governments, to discuss significant international issues. These summits often result in treaties or agreements and are crucial to addressing complex global issues. So each type of diplomacy plays a vital role in shaping international relationships, addressing conflicts, and promoting cooperation among nations. Understanding these forms helps you to appreciate the complexities, and there are very complex global interaction or global issues that require global interaction, and there are just unlimited amount of strategies that you can employ by the states or the private sector to achieve their objective. So the next one, and this is mostly in the news right now, is gunboat diplomacy. So the term gunboat diplomacy comes from around the 19th century. It's really started from the imperialism of the Western European and United States, and it's basically to intimidate less powerful countries into granting concessions through demonstration of their navies. So, and their military capabilities. So, the first thing we need to really look at is it successful? And how do you define success in a type of gunboat diplomacy where you're trying to force someone to do something? And I'll tell you, both right and left wing do this, and they do it for different reasons, and I'll touch on that in a moment. So the success of gunboat diplomacy can be measured by the effectiveness and of the coercive measures, so taken by nations that are employing the strategy. Why the tactics have evolved over time, and the core principles the core principles remain. The use or threat of limited naval force can secure advantages or avert loss. So success can be limited to that point in time, which may leave a power vacuum as well. So we've seen this in Venezuela with the United States. We see this now with Iraq and the United States and Israel. We are currently seeking a type of diplomacy playing out between U.S. and Iran, and only time is going to tell if this is productive, if it's successful, and how successful, and if it leaves a vacuum. So let's look at the power dynamics of international disputes first, and how we kind of deploy this. So there's notable distinctions between right-wing and left-wing perspectives on international law. right-wing interventionists often express skepticism regarding the influence of international law. And really, international law is agreements that we all make uh, between countries, but really it's enforced with who has the largest army. Um, you know, the outcome is determined really by the relative power of that actor, whether that nation. While the right acknowledges a role of international law in foreign affairs, they maintain that its provision should be adaptable to shifting dynamics among major powers. So right-wing interventionists argue frequent the center they frequently are in center with regulations related to the use of force, whereas left-wing reformers typically advocate for broader change across various aspects of international law. So the left-wing perspective is known for its strong commitment to the rule of law in international relationships. Supporters believe that international law, particularly customary international law, is continually being shaped by international human rights standards. So if you're violating the human rights of your citizenship, that gives a larger power the alleged authority to go and straighten out the matter, especially if you're considered a rogue nation. So this shift has contributed to the idea that humanitarian intervention abroad can be justified. Some advocates within the liberal camp go further and defend intervention aimed at establishing or restoring democracy. So, it's which is interesting because they may not want to be a democracy. It really depends on what the people want, and sometimes the people just don't know. So that's very interesting because they're used to living a certain way, whether it was a theocracy or a dictatorship or some kind of authoritarian government. They're used to that. And if they're happy, then imposing democracy on them may not be the right thing. So interestingly, both right and left wing overlap with certain arguments, and as both sides may use this to justify their support for regime change. Again, for what we term as a rogue nation or a rogue state. So that's really what I wanted to get through today. I know that I left a lot out, so please comment below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So I only wanted to go over the basics today, and I look forward to your comments. And if you would like to hear more on this issues, please comment and be a little bit more specific on what part of diplomacy that you want to talk about. And please like and subscribe, and I look forward to hearing and reading your comments and starting new conversations on this subject. So thank you for your time. Have a great day.